My name is Vasilia Mindabayeva. I'm a professional development coordinator on the professional development team at DCYF, and I am really excited to host you today for a session on relationship-based professional development. This is part of our ongoing webinar monthly series where we address things that the team is working on and things that are of importance to us. So really excited to have you here. It's going to be 1 hour, and we're going to make it as interesting and as exciting for you as possible, but we also don't want to waste any of your time. Before we get rolling, I want to make sure that you all know that Marlene White is on the other side of things, helping support the technological challenges and monitor chat boxes and support with muting and unmuting questions that might come up and audio issues. So she's there. You can reach her by typing to the professional development host. You can find her in the chat box. So she is going to be monitoring the chat actively, and I'm just going to, I'm going to be delivering the webinar to you. I'm really excited to hear your questions, hear your perspectives, and also I really want to encourage you to flag me down when I'm saying something that doesn't quite make sense, so I can take a moment to address some of those questions that you have. And so this is really a time for you to get as many questions answered as possible about the work that we're doing with relationship-based professional development. That being said, there's probably going to be things that that you ask me that I can't answer in real time. And so I'm going to do my best to come back to those questions and follow up on them. Sometimes the questions that I get asked are really complex and I can't answer them on my own, so I need a little bit of help from some of the other partners that we work with internally to answer those questions. So all that being said, I believe you see my screen, my title screen. If you don't, someone please chat box me. I've moved that over so I can see it easily. But I want to give you a real quick technological orientation. We are leaning into technology heavily now, and I'm sure you've done a WebEx in the last week or so. So this is probably not news to you, but in case you want to speak to us, and we want to avoid any sort of feedback. So please make sure that you're selecting your audio options and you're selecting either the phone or the computer, but not both, because then we get that ugly, crazy feedback that makes everyone's brains melt a little bit. We want to avoid that. You also can do a speaker test, which looks like this. You can test the speakers on your computer and your device, whatever you're using, by going to the file bar. I'm not sure what the right word is for that, but the toolbar on top of your WebEx, and it'll help you toggle what you need. And Marlene is super, so lean on her as well. So before we get started, I really am curious about a couple of things. I want to know a little bit more about why you joined the webinar today and what questions you might want us to address. So we talked about, in the description, we talked about this webinar covering the basics of what relationship-based professional development is. And if you are an RBPD provider currently, it's not going to be new to you. But we're also going to be talking about what the DCYF's vision around relationship-based professional development looks like over the next couple of years and what we're shooting for. And I'm sure you have questions that you're coming to this webinar, maybe things that you've heard from your supervisors or other people that you want us to think about as well or to address. This is a good time to let me know ahead of time so that I can sort of address or shift my focus when there's a little bit more interest around a certain topic area. So why don't you take a couple of minutes? I'm going to give you a minute to send in some responses.
Vasilia, this is Marlene. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I just want to remind all the participants that I am muting all upon entry. So if you do want to state something, just let me know and I'll try to unmute you. Otherwise, feel free to use the chat box. Thank you.
Okay, so a couple of things are, some chat responses are coming into the box now, and I appreciate for everyone who is participating in that. A lot of you want to know, just generally, may have heard about relationship-based professional development, but want a little bit more information about what that means and what that entails. And then some people have a little bit of familiarity, it looks like, with the topic, but want to know where DCYF is heading. And it looks like there are some questions about expectations for relationship-based professionals moving into the future. And some people are just curious about what DCYF is thinking, and we always want to make ourselves a little bit more transparent, so that's, thank you for joining. Okay, wonderful. It looks like we're very much aligned. There's some questions about skill building, about relationship-based professional development, and I think that's a great comment. We'll talk a little bit about development of future skill building opportunities, but this is not necessarily a relationship-based professional development training, but we can certainly follow up and connect you to those opportunities as well. Okay, and Marlene, there is a woman named Jen De Dios that needs a little bit of help with her audio. Okay, so thank you for sharing that with me. I'm going to try something new that I haven't done in in WebEx before. I'm going to launch a poll because I want to see who is in the room with me. So I'm going to ask you, what is your primary professional role? And I think it has launched, and I would love for you to fill this out. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to do so. I just want a better understanding of who is here with me this evening.
My wife's funeral. Which was actually.
Okay, if you want to participate in the poll, but you haven't yet, you've got about 10 seconds before I close it down.
Family has little plots, so we set up chairs and it rained.
Okay, so
On that day.
I guess WebEx gives me a time remaining, which is 15 seconds. So the majority of people on the phone today are already in relationship-based roles. There are some coaches on the line. There's some mentors. There's a couple of folks who are also state-approved trainers who might be in another role as well. And then I'm also curious to learn about how familiar some of you are with this content. So I'm going to try to launch a second poll. Let me see if I can figure out how to do that. Give me 1 second. Okay, well, I can't seem to figure that out, so we're just going to skip it because it's not that important. So the goals for today, I mentioned this, we want to increase some knowledge of what relationship-based professional development is and explore DCYF's vision for the RBPD workforce. Now, I have talked about this in different venues before. There was a session at WIAC last October, as well as an Elevate, and I've done a handful of community forums through the State Board of Education on this topic. So some of these slides might seem familiar to you. Relationship-based professional development uses professional relationships as a primary method to support professional growth of adult learners. It really is the relationship that really is the platform, is the foundation for the growth and the learning. And through this relationship that a professional has with a learner, they take an individual through the cycle of inquiry, a learning cycle, where they identify what a professional, the learner has, what skills they have, what assets they bring to the work that they do, and also think about and identify areas where improvement is needed. And so together, through this give and take relationship, they go through and the relationship-based professional takes someone through and helps them set goals, arms them with the skills and the tools they need to conduct observations, and then plan action steps around how to make adjustments in their practice. And then once those adjustments have been incorporated, whatever action plan steps that they decided upon, they do a reflection on what worked, what didn't work, how far did they come in their practice. And so it's part of this continuous cycle of quality improvement. And really, a lot of people go and do different types of professional development, but relationship-based professional development really relies on two individuals or several individuals getting together, forming a relationship that is really based on trust and respect and honor and of traditions and values and of the strengths of that individual. So it's really, it's a little bit different than some of the other types of professional development that are out there, but it's not necessarily RVPD, which is relationship-based professional development. I think I'm going to start using that acronym a little bit more, so just because it's a mouthful. But RBPD, we know can be paired with training, classroom-based, in-person training, online training, as a method to reinforce the concepts that are being delivered in that kind of learning environment too. So it could be on its own, but it can also be in association with another type of learning. So a couple of things that we know about relationship-based professional development and professional learning in general. We know that some of the traditional learning options, for example, that having a stage on the stage or someone lecture to you about a topic of interest or a topic that you need for your own in-service or pre-service, those classroom-based lecture-style learning approaches are not necessarily leading to long-term changes in practice. And we really are looking for effective PD. And for us, we know, and the research has shown over time, there's been a lot of attention devoted to this because industry is investing so much in their professional growth. We know that for PD, professional development, to be effective, it has to be ongoing, it has to be intentional, involve reflective components, and also be really goal-oriented and job embedded. Because there's a lot of growing and learning that happens from peers, and it's really a lot more impactful to learn a topic and then also incorporate it into your practice almost immediately, and then fine-tune and make adjustments to practice when you're doing the actual work. And we have found, or I guess researchers have found over time, that those individuals who participate in RBPD, relationship-based learning, they're more likely to have longer-term changes in their practice, which is what we're trying to do. A lot of us here are involved in work where we're trying to take an individual and move them and help them make improvements in their practice. So of course, relationship-based professional development is getting a little bit more attention because we know that it is effective, and we were really invested in finding the most efficient ways to do the work of supporting adult learners. And a couple of things are key here. We know that knowledge and skills and abilities leads to changes and impact. So we've invested a lot of time thinking about what core knowledge is important for relationship-based professionals and what kind of skills they need to have and abilities they need to have to do the work. And there's also some underlying individual dispositions and characteristics that are important for that individual to have or to cultivate within themselves so that they can result in greater impact in the work. And so I'm going to go into some of those knowledge and skills that are important for relationship-based professionals to have and talk about the relationship-based professional development standards that DCYF has developed in collaboration with many stakeholders over the past year. They went live last summer. And so we've identified several elements that are critical for impact. And these are in this, in the image you're seeing right now, every hexagon, I don't know what shape that is, forgive me. every shape has a category, which is a standard of the from the relationship-based professional development standards. And there are 6 of them. I'm not going to go into depth about what each of these encompasses at the moment, because that would take so much time and it would be a completely different training. But there's foundational knowledge, how to establish a relationship, things about adult learning that are necessary. There's a need for a professional to know how to co-create a relationship with another individual and how to approach their relationship with anti-bias. That standard in particular is new and very important to us because it talks about and identifies all of the competencies that are necessary for a person to engage to build their own self-awareness and grow their understanding of the values that they bring to a relationship and the perspectives that they bring and why, and how that can impact that relationship with another person. And so there's, of course, effective communication that is critical to successful relationship-based work. And through all of this, as you take an individual through the cycle, learning cycle, as you work on their practice and help them improve their practices through continuous quality improvement, you're constantly taking them through a change process. And so it's really critical for relationship-based professionals to understand what the change process looks like and to identify how to move a person really effectively and supportively through that. And of course, facilitating the learning cycle is important and knowing the parts of the learning cycle and how to progress through them. So these are foundational elements, critical elements that were outlined in the relationship-based professional development standards. And that work was done in collaboration with internal DCYF partners as well as external partners. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time thinking about this because I think it's really important moving forward into a conversation about our vision. DCYF has many different programs and initiatives under its umbrella. And some of them are early learning related, and many of you, I saw the participant list coming in, are from early learning. But also some of them are juvenile rehabilitation related or social services related. There are so many different professionals in DCYF who do relationship-based work in addition to early learning. Originally, the relationship-based professional development competencies were developed for an early learning audience, but at this point, we're really trying to broaden that, that understanding and include other types of work that's directed at children, youth, and families, also within the relationship-based professional development world. So for us, as we're identifying these standards, we partnered with Juvenile Rehabilitation, Children's Welfare, Child Care Aware of Washington, Imagine Institute, Head Start, ECAP, and we really try to be as intentional as possible in feeding in different perspectives as these were developed. I've received so many questions about who are relationship-based professionals and what roles are captured. That's why I spent a little bit of time talking about the different works, different bodies of work within DCYF that fall under this RBPD umbrella. But there's also a variety of roles that do that support support adults through the relationship. And I mentioned coaches, I mentioned mentors. There's also instructional leaders. So there's individuals in program level individuals who support their staff on an ongoing regular basis with professional development. They are also relationship-based professionals, even though coach or mentor isn't specifically in their job description or in their title. There's also supervisors, and a lot of supervisors help the growth of the people that they support and work with. Counselors who work with other adults. There's also home visitors to support the learning of other adults, and mental health specialists. There's a lot of different individuals who are engaged in this work. So I'm going to take a pause there and see if anybody has questions that have popped up since we've gotten going. I'm going to keep my eye on the chat box. So if you have a question, feel free to send me a message. I have it wide open in front of me, and I'll come back to it. Our state-approved trainers included. Ooh, good question, Carmen. Okay, so state-approved trainers, they are, that's a really good question, and I am excited to bring up, there's a May webinar that I'm going to showcase at the end of this, but state-approved trainers have their own competencies, and has been a lot of conversation on our team about the alignment of the trainer competencies and the RVPD standards, because there are some trainers who do meet with their training participants over a series of time, or need similar knowledge and skills to be able to do the work successfully. For example, I'm thinking immediately about the adult learning competencies, and I'm thinking immediately about the anti-bias approach. All of those things are really relevant. So state-approved trainers in our definition are not necessarily included in the relationship-based professional development idea, but they are going to have their trainer competencies revised in the near future, so that they mirror and also encompass some of the ideas that are captured in the relationship-based professional development standards. Do we see trainers as relationship-based professionals at this moment? And then the answer is not necessarily, but in some cases, maybe, which is not super satisfying, I bet, for a lot of people who like to see things a little bit more clearly. But we are working on making sure at least that the standards that they're operating on are aligned. And Carmen did mention that some EA coaches are trainers as well. And that's right. There's a lot of trainers who deliver on a topic and then also do subsequent trainings or coaching on that topic, which is a really highly effective model for transference from knowledge to practice. But that's not always the case. Not all trainers are relationship-based professionals. I have a question from Betty Hanna. Are social work specialists who meet with children and family relationship-based professionals? I believe that individuals who are building the skills of learners are relationship-based professionals, and that's the definition that we have for RBPD. So yes, I see them as being also captured in this and under this umbrella. Any other questions? Can't think of any immediately, that's okay. Always feel free to chat in the box. All questions are welcome, and if I can't answer them right now, I'll certainly try my hardest and then also loop back to you once I have a more definitive answer. Okay, I opened too many windows, guys, so hold on. I gotta find my actual window. Okay, so I want to think about some of the dispositions. What kind of dispositions or personal characteristics do effective relationship-based professionals have? Because I think we talked about the knowledge and skills that are necessary. Now I want to go back and think about those individual dispositions and individual characteristics that people bring for effective relationship-based work. And there's, if you feel like chiming some in the chat box, go right ahead. I also have a slide because we talk about this in our relationship-based professional development standards. We have identified a couple of different areas. So RBPD professionals are usually caring. They go into the work because they want to really genuinely see improvement and help people grow. They are communicative and creative individuals who are really resilient in their thinking, and they're also critical thinkers, right? They can really take in the information, be reflective about it, open-minded, and help a provider find the best path for them. Kelly Clark mentioned the growth mindset, which I think is a really clear. I can't believe we haven't put that on there, but you're absolutely right. Growth mindset is absolutely critical because you want to make sure that you're encouraging people to grow, that their skills and abilities are not native to them. They're not born with them, but they can invest time and improve their practice. Thank you so much, Kelly, for bringing that up. And I see, I think, well, someone named Ramos maybe, going, yes, I'm really supportive of that. And flexible with other perspectives. And I think that one is really part of that critical thinking, right? Being open-minded and effective is part of that. But also, I think you're bringing up an idea that there's a lot of different perspectives that come from cultures and value systems that are different from yours. So approaching people with interest and respect and assuming best intentions is also really important. Those are really great additions, everybody. Thank you. I want to make sure we capture growth mindset because that is a really key characteristic. And a couple of other things are really important, right? We want to make sure that the relationship-based professional is knowledgeable in their content area because, right, I just mentioned that there's so many different relationship-based professionals that are possible and do the work under the DCYF umbrella. They're all coming from different content areas, even though there might be some overlap. So coaches for early learning have to have a different knowledge set than, for example, a social work specialist, right? And another kind of professional. So if you're an infant toddler coach or infant toddler specialist, you have a different set of knowledge that you need to operate under. And there's also other sets of competencies out there. For example, social workers have an additional set of competencies. 0 to 3 has competencies for infant toddler professionals also. And those standards and content areas build on top of the relationship-based professional development standards. So if you're thinking about this, the RBPD standards are the bottom of a pyramid, and on top we have the more content-specific standards and competencies that are that people also have to adhere to. And there's everybody who does the work must have some understanding and skills working with adult learners because adult learners are a little bit different than children, right? I mean, for obvious reasons, but also they bring a lot of experience and richness from that in a lot of different perspectives. And it's really important to acknowledge prior learning and prior experience and meet that person where they're at and add on to it and scaffold their learning and continue to build on top of that. There's also a code of conduct that comes into play, and different professionals have different codes of conduct that are important to them, as well as, and I think this goes without saying, really confidential handling of sensitive information. And the people who engage in our relationship-based work are often established trusting relationships, a strong connection with the individual, and through that connection, they start to learn a little bit more about their personal lives or things that are going on. And that's not necessarily information that is necessary for other people to have. It's very sensitive, and so being able to respect that and hold that for that individual is really important. And Betty Hanna is saying yes. And Kelly says, understanding and respecting boundaries is so critical. You're right. And the RVPD standards do go into that, setting your own professional boundaries and respecting the boundaries of the person that they're supporting. Absolutely. So that was a really quick, steamroll. I'm just rushing through within the time that I have, overview of relationship-based professional development. If you're really curious to learn more about this, send me an email and I will make sure to send you resources or develop another opportunity to go deeper into this content because there's so much here. We could spend hours on it, and the coaches and the relationship-based professionals on the line here can absolutely agree with that. So a topic for a different day, and I do want to make sure we talk about where DCYF is going. I just needed to set the stage for everybody to be on the same baseline level before we got into DCYF's vision for the future. And what we're currently trying to do is build a diverse relationship-based professional workforce to ensure that all community-level participants are receiving individualized, responsive, and effective services. So that is really our big push. Not to say that that people have not been providing effective and responsive and individualized services, but we find that so key and important that we need to emphasize that. And right now, there has been a lot of demand across the state for having a diverse relationship-based professional workforce, making sure that there's language, the people who are supporting the community-level participants, that they represent, that they look and speak and understand the value systems and the traditions and the beliefs of the people that they're supporting. So we're looking to build a diverse workforce. And that, for us, that means a couple of things. I've talked about how DCYF has many RBPD programs, and we also want to make sure that across all of the programs that we have, people are getting the same kind of onboarding into their roles. They have the same kind of expectations for what knowledge and skills that they must have, and that they have opportunities to onboard and then have ongoing professional learning in that role. And so that's really key. It exists for early learning in some ways, and in some ways it can stand to improve, but it needs to be consistent across various RBPD programs that we have within DCYF. So that's really a driver for us to re-examine and rethink this approach to how we grow our relationship-based workforce. And what that means is that we are also going to be thinking about preparation pathways, and preparation pathways through community-based training and through higher education approaches. And in order for us to do all of this well and to build a system, a relationship-based professional development system that I'll talk about in a second, we also need to collect workforce data, which we actually do not have at the moment consistently across all programs. And it's important for us to have that information in order for us to know who is doing the work, what kind of professional backgrounds do they have, what kind of education backgrounds do they have, what kind of training are they receiving, how long have they been doing the work. We have so much information about the early learning workforce in MERIT right now, which is the Early Learning Professional Development Registry, but we don't have information about our relationship-based professional development workforce, and we absolutely need it in order for us to invest appropriately and have an idea of what kind of system we need to build. So it's really important for us to build a diverse workforce. In order for us to do that, we have to do a couple of things. First, we have to establish an RVPD system, and I wish it sounded actually wasn't as easy as that sounds. It's not really. There's a lot of things that are involved with this. We talked about the RVPD standards, so that serves as the foundation of the RVPD system, and we're really trying to create infrastructure of policies, procedures, standards that guide workforce best practices, onboarding, career prep, and we're looking to fully launch the RBPD system by 2025. So it's not tomorrow, it's not the next fiscal year, it's going to happen over an intentional couple of years of systems build out. So it's likely that not much will change immediately, but incrementally you will see some developments where, for example, the RBPD standards, they were written, and now we're thinking about ways of capturing workforce data so that we can continue to understand who we have in our system and in the different DCYF programs, and using that information to build preparation pathways and create policies that would be helpful. So it's going to take some time, and it's going to take some effort, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're going to get there. I can't believe I actually made a slide for that, so that's funny. What we're going to do is we're going to do a couple of things, and some of these have already happened, and some of these are in the works, but we're moving forward, and some of you have seen the slide before, so it's not really a secret, but it has gone through a little bit of change. So the first stop on this roadmap was to establish professional standards for this type of work. And that was done by completing the RBPD, the Relationship-Based Professional Development Competency Revision. So we revised them and we created standards. They're very detailed, they're very comprehensive. And the next step, right now, we're in the process of doing our landscape analysis. And that is a report that we're developing that is looking across all of the RVPD programs that we have in DCYF and collecting information about their workforce, what onboarding they have access to, what ongoing learning they have access to, and thinking about the needs of a relationship-based professional over time, when they start their career, when they have been in their career for some time, and when they have completely mastered the RBPD standards, the foundational knowledge and skills for the work, and are ready to teach others. So we're really thinking about what is currently in our system, because one of the things that is really important to us is not to reinvent the wheel, not to recreate trainings and onboardings, but think about what do we have and how do we use what we have to create a progression of learning experiences and streamline things so they feel a little bit more seamless for different RBPD professionals who are also doing the work. And this landscape analysis report was supposed to be completed in the spring when we thought we were going to be able to do the community engagement efforts that we wanted to. We got a little bit delayed with the current pandemic. So hopefully by the end of summer, crossing our fingers, we will have that landscape analysis report complete. And in it, there will be recommendations about how we should move forward based on the assets that we currently have in our system. Okay, so that's one of the big things that is on top for our team right now. Another one is also determining how we're going to be determining a model or creating a model. We're going to call it, we're calling it right now, the Relationship-Based Professional Development, Relationship-Based Professional Endorsement Model. And this is just a model that is going to have 3 different levels of relationship-based professional and include things like types of training that they must receive in each of the levels. And it serves as a roadmap for a professional to see what kind of learning opportunities they must go through in order to move up to be a higher level relationship-based professional. And this is, it's currently in the works, and this was part of our, also one of the things that we wanted to engage the community about is gather information to build out this endorsement model, which is similar to if you have experience with the Washington Infant Mental Health Association, they have an endorsement model. It's similar to some of the other endorsement models that are out there, and it's going to have our own flavor to it. It's going to have Washington-related training opportunities, and it's going to involve also talk about trainings that we have yet to develop. I am not in a position to share that out quite yet because it is still in such draft form, but it is coming. And if you're an RBPD professional and if you work for one of our major partners, you'll have an opportunity to look at it. And if you don't work for one of our professional development partners, then we will also engage in a different way to make sure that we collect your feedback to inform this endorsement model. And so those are the 2 things that we are currently slightly paused on because they involve reaching out to people and convening focus groups and having in-depth conversations. We're thinking about ways to do that virtually, even though that might not give us as rich of feedback as we want, but we're trying to make do. So based on in the endorsement model, what's important to note about that is it will also involve a component where a professional needs to complete an application and merit to capture what role they have in the system, how many years they've been doing it, the education that they bring to their role, and the kind of trainings that they have. The endorsement model is really our vehicle for holding the workforce data, which is so critical for us to making informed decisions about policies and procedures moving forward, and also advocating for systems building enhancements and more funding to really support the work that you all are doing. So those are the two things that are in flux. Now, the next path after landscape analysis and the endorsement model are completed is thinking about planning the professional pathways, professional preparation pathways, and then establishing those pathways. And none of this will happen quickly. And it will happen over the next 5 years when hopefully we'll have that established pathways and ready, and we'll be ready to take in new professionals, and they'll be able to go to school through the higher education system and learn about RVPD, or go through the community-based trainings and learn about RVPD. I am going to pause here for questions because I know that was a lot, and there are some things that are potentially confusing or of interest to people. So I am going to give you a little bit of a pause to see if there are any questions. Okay, I'm going to take that as I was really clear, but if you have anything that you're thinking about, I will answer them. And Chris Carney, thank you. Do the professional pathways include the UW's coaching certificate program? That is a really good question, and that is the coaching certificate program is coming up in our landscape analysis. It's going to be included in the endorsement model, and so yes, it will play a role in the professional pathway. It's just not clear what other things will be added to it and what other things will be available. The coaching certificate program is a master's level program, and it's not necessarily accessible to everybody. Okay, that's a good question. So again, we're not going to be reinventing the wheel. We're going to be using what we have in our system and packaging it together and making it accessible to all relationship-based professionals. So here's the gains, right? We want to know what the benefits are from all of this and why this work is important. And at the core of it, really, we are going to be able to prepare a more diverse workforce. These are people who are going to be really effective at the work that they do, which means that we're going to be able to meet greater outcomes for children and families. That is the core of the why and all of this effort that's being invested into building our RBPD system. So a couple of things that lead to that, right? We'll have better workforce data. We'll have common preparation pathways. We'll have those progressive learning opportunities. We're going to have improved services to learners, who are the people who receive the RBPD supports. And then we're going to have shared onboarding approaches so that across the board, people are going to be receiving similar learning opportunities that they can then build on based on the type of work that they do. All right. I thought for a second we glitched. And then there's going to be, I'm sure you're wondering who is helping with that endorsement work, the landscape analysis work, and who will be helping with the career professional preparations work. And since we are doing this as a collaborative inter-DCYF, but also external effort, the partnerships that are important to us are those folks who do mentoring services, who do coaching support. We really are interested in also a lot of the ECAP programs that do their coaching supports. We're interested in what Head Start is doing. And so our regular PD partners are part of this conversation. And also there's other new professional development DCYF partners that we're cultivating that are in addition to some of those traditional early learning partners that we have had as a professional development team, or DEL. And what roles and programs will be impacted by these changes? That's a really good question. And the roles that we have represented on this call and the roles that I mentioned earlier are going to be impacted by the relationship-based professional development standards and by the endorsement model, as well as the preparation of professional development opportunities that are going to be made available. And it's not necessarily, this is not where I can tell you how early achievers is going to be impacted, or Head Start will be impacted, or social services is going to be impacted. This is not part of the scope of this conversation because those details will need to be finessed with those various programs within our agency. But you will have more information coming about those over the next couple of months and years. It's a progressive process. And some of you have heard me say and talk about this before, and you're like, we know this, what's actually going on? And I'll make sure to keep you abreast about those changes and about the latest developments on our RBPD website, on DCYF's website, which is linked here. And you can easily find it if you do a Google search, but also use the DCYF search bar. That works most times as well. So you can stay tuned for more information. I am really interested and invested in making sure that all of you who do the work are looped in and receive the message. And so I want to make sure, I'm going to be holding myself accountable to that and reaching out to your Child Care in Washington, Imagine Institute, but also making sure that we do these webinars frequently enough where as something emerges, for example, the endorsement model or the landscape analysis results come in, the recommendations come in, we'll be sharing that. But also, as we engage you all to help us come up with those recommendations, you'll be hearing from our team on a regular basis. I have a couple. I'm going to check my chat box really quick. Kelly Clark says, do you possibly foresee restructuring any of the current service delivery models in order to really allow fuller implementation of professional development? Oh, you literally just answered it. Will this be part of this? Kelly, I can say yes, there will be some changes, and those changes you will see, and they'll be incremental, and they'll happen over time. And you'll probably receive those messages from your parent organization if you're a child care aware. They'll share that information down with you. But I want to make sure that there's opportunities for me to talk more directly to people, even though this is me just talking at you. I really want to hear some of the things that are coming up for you. So I have a question before I take more questions from all of you. I want to see, is there anything that I talked about today that you went, that's interesting. More on that, please. I want to know that so that I can target my messages accordingly and make sure I hit those points in the further conversations. So type in anything that's outstanding to you or that you might want me to dive into later, and I'll make sure to pay a little bit more attention to it. I also want to put a plug-in for a newsletter that we just put out, which is a retooling of the Trainer Gazette. We have created a Growing the Workforce newsletter that's geared towards anyone who does professional development facilitation. It's not just state-approved trainers anymore. We're talking to relationship-based professionals, people who are invested in supporting the learning of others. So if you find yourself to be one of those people, make sure you are picking up this Growing the Workforce newsletter. It was on our social media. a handful of you who have probably received it, who are already state-approved trainers. And if you're not, reach out to us, and Marlene's on top of it. Reach out to marlene.white@dcyf.wa.gov. She just chatted her email to you to receive it so she can put you on the list. And that's a really good way for me to stay in touch with you about all things related to state-approved training and relationship-based professional development. And she also put a link to the newsletters and webinars that we put out from our professional development team. So send me questions if you got them. Also, a little plug-in for May 6th. I'm doing a webinar on the state-approved trainer renewal process, also at 6 p.m. And if you go to that webinar, it'll have a registration. If you go to the newsletter, you'll have the registration link for that, and you can participate. That will be a conversation about the big renewal effort that we're doing by the end of this year and sort of what to expect about it. Okay. If you all have questions, chime in. I'll hang out for a little bit. If you don't, thank you for joining and participating at 6 to 7 p.m. in the middle of the week during COVID times, which is a really weird, strange, stressful time for all of us. So I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate sharing the messages that we have with you. And let me know if you have any questions. I'll be here for a little bit. And also thank you to Marlene, who did a really good job with all the things behind the scenes. Okay, hi Ida. You asked, with Trainer Pathways Professional Development I'm currently participating with, we use RBPD Standards in our professional development team. Is there a training currently available with RVPD? Great question. And it sounds like you are from Imagine Institute, and they are the ones who are doing the Trainer Pathways Professional Development series for their staff and their trainers. I know that you all are doing a really good job at Imagine embedding the RVPD standards into your work. And so you all actually have a training series around relationship-based professional development as well. So I would suggest that you reach out to Irina McIntyre, and she'll be able to help you. There are also some other trainings available in the community. So after you have a conversation with Rena at Imagine, you can loop around back to me if you are looking for additional training opportunities around relationship-based professional development. Do we have your contact information? Kelly, great question. I have not shared it with you all, but I will certainly share it with you. It's usually on my last slide, but I seem to have skipped my last slide this time. Oh, here it is. It's my first name and last name, and it's long, but it's what I got. So feel free to reach out to me, Kelly, if you have any other questions. Okay. Okay, it looks like the questions have wrapped up, but you all have my email address and you know where to find me. So I look forward to talking with all of you again and keeping in touch, and stay tuned for our May 6th webinar on trainer renewal. Thank you, Marlene, for supporting me today. Appreciate it.